Today we're going to talk about mental health and academic progress and how they work together and or against each other. So a lot of times people, children specifically, because I'm talking about primary and secondary, which can ultimately affect you when you go to college and other things. But I'm trying to talk about things from a preventative or proactive. So catching things while they're early or when they're young would be ideal. And so it is important to consider your child's mental health because it can directly impact how they perform in school. A lot of people, especially after the panini, people consider social anxiety. Social anxiety took the nation by storm for children and adults alike, from being secluded for so long and in isolation and then trying to go back into the general public or in large settings like the school was very difficult, and a lot of kids could not transition back uh, smoothly or at all. Some kids are still virtual. Some kids end up being virtual much later, but it was not conducive to the average child. Even I was at the schools when this happened. The kids did not come back the same. They were the way they interacted with each other, the way they talked, everything was different. It was weird. A lot of them even regressed. It seemed mature wise. They were a lot more touchy or way more standoffish. It was very obvious that these kids almost didn't know how to socialize anymore, as if they lost those skills over that year and a half they were out of school, in a public setting around other people. And so kids who had social anxiety, it was exacerbated in the kids who never had any seemingly bouts of anxiety at all seemed to now have it and at an all-time high. And it was strange and weird. And a lot of people didn't know how to handle it. And I still think that as a society, we're still figuring out how to recover from that time period back in 2020 to 2022-ish, because things were just so odd and different, even with people working from home. Everybody's life was changed drastically to an extent when that happened. And so, in general, outside of situations as such, if your child has anxiety, which is likely if you suffer from anxiety, a lot of times kids can have anxiety because they got it from you, in the sense that even though they don't know it as anxiety, they can't put a name on it. They may not be of age or understanding to say, hey, parent, you have anxiety. But the way you handle things and act and react, they now pick that up. And so when they're in a school setting with a bunch of eyes on them, people are like, oh, this kid seems to have really bad anxiety. But if you didn't know you had anxiety because you're used to being that way, you wouldn't have identified that. Or you're wondering why they act like that, where they get it from. Remember, like I've said in other videos, this is their age version of you sometimes. And so this is what your anxiety looks like in a 7-year old, 8-year old, or 9-year old. And it could be some unique things that are completely different from yours. But a lot of times it's not necessarily hereditary or genetic, but kids learn from their environment. So if they live in an anxious environment, they can pick up. Remember, there's exceptions to all the rules. In the same way, kids can be raised by the same parents and turn out very differently. One, because you parent each child differently, whether you think so or not. And you shouldn't, and that should be intentional, because things just happen otherwise. But one can go one way in life and the other can go a completely different direction, and everybody's wondering what happened or what went wrong. And the way they learn over time to respond to their environment can change. So, in the way that two children can be raised by alcoholics, one becomes an alcoholic and the one never drinks. You just never know how people will ultimately turn out based on what they've seen. But we should just be as careful as possible to be intentional in what we demonstrate and model for our kids, because even if we never talk about it or plan for it to be that way, you don't really ever really fully know what all your kids are picking up on, even though they don't mention it or you don't see it immediately. So here's some things to keep in mind. I am using my notes if you see me looking down. And so the first thing I wanted to address are morning routines. Morning routines are important for everybody, all humans, regardless of age. We need your sleep schedule. Research shows that ideally you should wake up and go to sleep around the same time every day. That is not kid specific. We prioritize sleep younger. We make sure kids take naps. We try to make them go to bed early. You need that as an adult. And that might be why you're a little angry sometimes, okay? Or some other things. You're not giving your body enough time to fully recover. But I'm talking about the children right now because I advocate for children more than I do anything else. And so morning routines are important. What environment do you cultivate or foster for that kid before they go to school? Please stop yelling at them. Even if they piss you off in the morning, change the routines, change the systems, do something differently. But if you yelling or cursing them out or calling them names, spanking them, disciplining them at 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m., and then sending them off to school, it's a recipe for disaster. I'm not here to tell anybody how to parent, but I am here to tell people how they can parent better. If that makes sense. It's just certain things should be off the table. This kid needs to get up at the same time every morning. They will adapt over time, and they may never say thank you, but they will appreciate it, and you will see a significant difference in the way they behave and perform at home and at school and anywhere else. Make sure they're getting a nutritious breakfast. Please stop doping those kids up on sugars and dyes. I know there's laws changing how stuff is made, but a lot of times people don't see them as filling their kids up with sugar because they're not giving them candy. If you're giving them cereal, you're giving them sugar. If you're giving them bread, you're giving them sugar. Okay, and I'm not saying they can't have an Uncrustables. If that's what you got and that's quick based on what you got going on, do that. But just keep these things in mind. But try to have the same morning routine where kids know what they're going to do in the morning, where they get their clothes from. Are they set out the night before? Do you put them in a certain area? Are they picking their clothes? Are you picking their clothes? Are lunches made the night before? Are they grabbing their lunch kit out the refrigerator? Are they on the counter? Have some systems in place. And as you can see, this requires some accountability for you as the adult. Kids need to know what their mornings look like so it can be streamlined. This makes it easier for everybody before you send them off to school. What this has to do with mental health and academic progress is how they start their morning can, just like you, if you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, you feel like everything goes wrong after it. Remember, children are humans, they're just younger than you. So if they start off with a rough morning, everybody at school tends to suffer. This kid may shut down, which makes it difficult, or they may act out, which makes it difficult, or they're just not functioning optimally, right? They're dozing off, they're zoning out, they have a bad attitude, they're talking back, they're throwing things, they're tapping on the desk, they're crawling on the floor, they're going to the restroom for long periods of time, they need water, they need to wash their face. There's so many now disruptions because this kid's nervous system is wrecked. And so they can't even function well at school to even learn. They're thinking about what you said to them, what happened to them that morning. They didn't eat breakfast, and so now they're hungry, so they're not paying attention. So all these things affect their cognitive ability that directly impacts how they perform in school. Because everybody's different, this can look different from kid to kid. And so some kids may still do well and pass their classes, while other kids, they may not do any work at all because they're mad at the world or just not in the mood or too exhausted to use their brain. And so they're not performing. They're just doing the bare minimum or nothing at all. It can look a variety of ways. I hope you get my point. But how they start their morning, just like how you start your morning, can impact your whole day. If one thing goes wrong in the morning, then you feel like everything goes wrong. Now you're in traffic. Now you forgot to get breakfast. Now everything pisses you off, and you're done with the day. And it's only 7:30. It happens to kids too. Give the kids some credit. Respect them as humans, not just your child. Okay. I kind of mentioned before diet. So breakfast matters. One, diet matters when it comes to mental health in general, for cognitive functioning, for recovery, for all these things. Your diet matters. We should all reduce how much sugar, and we all need to move our bodies more. But specifically with kids, if you give them a lot of sugar in the morning, cereal, donuts, all these things that you're like sweet treats, it helps them get out. It motivates them. I get it. You're doing what you can to get these kids out of your house so you can do what you have to do today. But it can affect how they perform in school because now they're either hyper or they're having a crash from the sugar. So again, they're sleeping, not enough, zoning out, or they're just not really as healthy as they could be. And so their brain doesn't work as efficiently. And so also when it comes to diet, as a person who was collecting leftover breakfast and lunch to feed the kids need to eat regularly. I understand, especially in this economy, things are getting worse, not better. A lot of kids only eat at school, but if the kids are not getting to school on time to get breakfast, they will miss out on breakfast. A lot of these times, these kids want more breakfast than what's given to them, and so they're not even eating enough, and that is causing a multitude of problems. So diet does matter. So if you don't, I'm not telling you need to cook grits and eggs and bacon every morning because that may not be feasible. Maybe you meal prep these things, but having some healthier-ish options available would be ideal for you and your child. Most of these things will apply to adults too, but again, I'm focusing on setting children up for success, and that should make your life easier. People aren't calling you, you're not going to meetings, and the child is giving you less issues. Next is sleep. Everybody, including you, needs more sleep, probably, and quality sleep. It's not just about if you're sleeping 8 hours. If you were not well rested after those 8 hours, it's almost pointless, because your body just didn't do your body just didn't do what it needed to do or what it's supposed to do when you were asleep. So something to consider is having a regular sleep schedule. Your circadian rhythm needs to be together, having sleep hygiene, sleep routine. What do they do? How do they wind down for the day? How do you wind down for the day? If are you whooping them or grounding them or punishing them and then sending them off to bed? Those kids are probably staying up later thinking. Some of them are on electronics. You're thinking as long as they're in their room, they're quiet, but they're having too much light and activity from the TV or their phones or tablets or whatever they have. Some of them are still playing with their toys if they have access to them. Make sure your kids are asleep. Let's go back to tucking them in, making sure they're asleep before we do anything else. Now, I will say I am guilty. I go to bed before my son, but my son is also almost 17. Before this year, it was not like that. He had a very strict bedtime. He had to get off his computer an hour before bed so his brain could start to shut down so he can fall asleep, because your brain will keep going. Just because you lay down doesn't mean your brain stops working. And a lot of times your brain is still processing whatever you just finished doing, let alone everything you've done for the day if you've not taken time to decompress and relax. Your brain is still processing that stuff. And so everybody's just laying in the bed, eyes open, looking at the ceiling, wondering when sleep will find them. Kids need more sleep than adults typically. Women need more, females need more, genetically speaking, women, natural born women need more sleep than naturally born, biologically born, whatever words you want to use. This stuff gets complicated, but people who were born a woman need more sleep than people who were born a man. I think that clears that up. And then all your health and dietary, all those other things do play a factor. Your lifestyle definitely matters, but you need sleep. That kid needs sleep. And I think if everybody gets sleep, it might just be a more peaceful environment in general. You got to love a good nap. Everybody needs a good nap. But sleep, 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 sleep. Because those kids will sleep at school, or those kids will zone out because they're sleepy if they don't. A lot of times I actually saw, even in the middle school level, kids were going to the nurse saying something's wrong just so they can take a nap because they were tired. And I do know everybody's circumstances are different. Some kids are helping you with your younger children. That's a different conversation. I'm not here to shame you for doing what works for your family. But if you work night shifts and things like that, those kids are now putting the other kids to bed and making sure they're okay and helping them with homework. I understand if that's what you have to do. Sacrifices have to be made. But these are things I just want you to consider that could be negatively impacting your child's mental health, and therefore they're not doing as well in school as they could be doing. And this is important because you don't want your child to get a lot of labels, all because of things that may have been, if controlled better, your kids may be functioning more optimally. Because you have to understand, with the way assessments are made for diagnoses, there's so many extenuating factors and nuances that can contribute to you and or anybody meeting the criteria for certain diagnoses, when there's certain lifestyle choices that, if they were changed, would change everything and they would no longer qualify. And there's a lot of nuances to diagnosis. Only people who should be diagnosed. I don't care how similar your friend is or TikTok is. If a professional didn't diagnose you, tread lightly with what you think of. Oh, I have that too. Or, oh, this person says this is this, and it turns out they have this, so I must have that too. And now you're living with that. That may not be true. If you have a regimen and systems in place, a healthy diet, good sleep, you're moving your body, it can eradicate a lot of your symptoms. Okay. Homework. Kids, homework is stressful. A lot of schools are not doing homework anymore, or kids are doing homework at school or finding other ways around it. You may think your kid doesn't have homework even though they do, or you're a parent that is up late with your kid because they get a lot of homework depending on the type of school they're at. So homework can be stressful. Homework is important though. If they get homework, it is ideal for you to go over it with them. One, because you get to see any gaps in their education. Two, you can help close those gaps if you're able to do it. I know once the kids get older, that work gets harder, and it's not stuff we learned back in the day. And you might have to Google it, right? Or use some type of app to get them some help. But you can help your kid a lot because you can also boost their confidence. You can see where they're struggling so you can help them. And so they'll be prepared and be more successful when they're at school. And also you caring and being attentive to them because they're now getting individual, hopefully uninterrupted attention from you at this time. They feel cared about, they feel loved, they feel wanted, and therefore they also behave and do better at school because they want to make themselves proud and you proud. So, homework can play an important factor in your relationship with your child and how they perform at school. Again, depending on the type of school and if this homework is even beneficial to begin with. But it's always an opportunity for quality time with your child. And then when it comes to studying, studying can be difficult if kids have anxiety, depression, or other mental health concerns. So it's very important for you to know what's going on because either it can prevent them from studying, it can make them not study as well or as effective as they could, and therefore they're not performing as well as they could in school. And so maybe you should be studying with them, maybe they need a tutor, but studying, everybody doesn't need to study, but studying could boost again their self-esteem, their self-confidence. It will make them feel better about what they're doing. They won't feel as behind because sometimes kids act out because they feel dumb or stupid. They feel out of place because everybody knows the answer. They never know the answer. They're hearing kids read out loud and they can't read out loud the same way or can't read at all and things like that. And so they get attention other ways because for a lot of kids and people, humans in general, negative attention is better than no attention. And so these kids are misbehaving or causing a distraction to their classmates or just not paying attention at all again because they don't know this. So maybe your kids need to study, maybe you need to help them study, maybe y'all can study together, but that will positively improve their mental health in some ways. It won't fix a disorder if they have one, but it can soothe some of them or mitigate the symptoms of some of them, and therefore they can perform better in school. So these are just some tidbits. This is not an exhaustive list of everything to keep in mind, but these are things that I think are the most easiest or simplest because everything's easier said than done. These are simple things that over time, if you change these few things, they can make a significant difference or impact on your child's success in school.